On this episode of AV Week, we take a look at the return of possible AV trade shows, AIMS and the AIMS Alliance and AV over IP, and cinematic displays in the conference room. All that and more. Next on AV Week.
The network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
is AV.
This
is AVNation.
This is AVNation.
This is AV Week, episode 561, recorded Friday, May 20th, 2022. Now, not normal.
Support for AVNation is brought to you by Draper.
This is AV Week, your weekly wrap-up of audio-visual news and information. My name is Tim Albright. I am your host. With us to discuss the news and information we have gathered this week, first and foremost, a young lady that I got to meet during the pandemic. I got to meet in person, live, in real life, holy crap, in Barcelona, and she is still over in Europe. I am not. Bren Welker from Kierkegaard. Welcome, ma'am.
Hello. Thank you for having me. I'm glad to be back, and it was just a delight to finally meet you in person.
Absolutely. It was fantastic.
Very excited.
There was a lot of that last week, wasn't there? There was because a handful of us connected during the pandemic and connected, through Twitter, through social, through other reasons. And last week was one of the first of many kind of real in-person meetings. So, yeah, it was cool.
Yeah. Well, I built my team during the pandemic, so, you can do anything.
Absolutely. Also with us, a couple guys that I at least know their companies, and I know some of their folks in real life, but not met these guys. First, George Herbert from Epiphan. Welcome, sir.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
And Matt Davis from our friends over at PTZ Optics. Welcome, sir.
Yeah, thank you. Excited to be on the show.
Absolutely. Speaking of last week, speaking of ISE, first story comes to us from our friends over at Rave. ISE tops 43,000 attendees. Really quick note here. In the past, and especially at CES and NAB this year, the attendee count, from my estimation and from what I've been able to read, includes everybody, the manufacturers, and the whole shebang. What Avixa, CEDIA, and Integrated Systems Europe are trying to do is do what's called qualified attendees. What that means is, as Bren and I walked through the turnstile every day and they scanned our badge, our digital badge, and we'll get to that in a second, we would be counted once. That's it, over the course of the 4 days. George and Matt, because they're exhibitors, they would not be counted, right? So in the past, they would have been counted at the 80,000 number of ISE at its height at 2019. However, what they're trying to do is give vendors a little bit more realistic number, a little bit more real number. And again, also it gives you a percentage of, oh, hey, we had 1,000 scans out of the 43,000. So this is kind of how we did from a ratio standpoint. So kudos to them for going down that road. But Gary Kay writes about this, says, 43,000, 151 countries, and according to ISE, 90,000 visits to the show floor. Again, what that means is that, again, Bren and I walked through all 4 days, so that is part of that 90,000, but the 43,000 is her and I being counted once. Matt, when it comes to, or George, rather, when it comes to, this looking at this and seeing where we're at, what does this mean for shows? What does this mean for the industry?
Yeah, well, I mean, first, great explanation, and thanks for that explanation on the counts, because as someone who's been to ISE in the past, but hasn't been there quite some time now, of course, and unfortunately, I wasn't able to attend this one. That I looked at those numbers and went, is that good? And kind of was questioning. And then I heard from my colleagues who did attend, and they said it was a great show. They had a great time. They said, obviously business-wise, they were super positive about it. I've been chasing leads all week on things they brought in. So I think in a large part this, and, I guess for us, the media show before it, and maybe Matt will talk about this too, was NAB. Between the two, it felt like, shows are back. In a pretty significant way, at least from a manufacturer standpoint. We might still have a ways to go. I heard a lot of people talking about how Barcelona is not quite as large physically as a venue as Amsterdam and stuff like that. And I think people will get used to those things and in that change and that shift. I personally was looking forward to a change of scenery from previous years in Amsterdam to Barcelona, and hopefully next year I'll get to experience that.
Matt, same kind of question. What does this say about the industry?
I think things are back. There's actually a really interesting aspect to this. I think that we've been tossing around, and that's, well, we've seen quote unquote lower attendance numbers. It's almost like a filter that's gone on. So the people that are actually attending this is their living. This isn't just people tinkering around that are coming out for the shows at this point. These are people that are truly invested in what this industry is doing. So everybody who's coming to your booth, anyone you're interacting with, this is a great person to know. Whether they're even interested in your products or not, these are people who are heavily invested in seeing our industry succeed. So we found it to be incredibly helpful. A lot of amazing leads came out of it. And I feel like it was even better for the attendees because we could actually spend more time with each of them as a result of it. So overall, it made me feel really good about it. And I think, we might not see those attendance numbers go back up, but I think if we were to look at the remote or the remote viewers of the content being produced there, we would start to see things equal out, if not go well beyond numbers we ever saw before.
I would echo that and just say, that's the trend we've certainly seen in the past little while is that, yeah, it feels like the numbers might be down, but as a manufacturer, people selling things, the quality of those leads is significantly higher, to Matt's point. And that's ultimately, as a manufacturer, what we want. And I think, Matt, you were alluding to this as well, is that if we get to have a longer quality conversation, instead of eating up a few minutes here and there for people who are just trying to fill their bag with swag, awesome, right? That's ultimately a win for us. And I think that's exactly what we've seen.
Yeah. Now, I will say I do miss one little aspect, though. The people that would come with their really, really crazy ideas. Like, maybe this isn't a money-making idea, but like, have you ever tried to make your products do this? It's like, never even thought about it, but now you've got my brain spinning.
Maybe better done on Twitter. I think that you hit on a point, Matt, that I think is really important. With all of the organizations that I've been involved with that have done things online in the last 2 years, somewhere there's this reference to getting back to normal. And I think we should just forget about that, and should just be in now. And now what can happen is that people who might not have known about ISE before, I knew about ISE, but it never occurred to me to go, really, honestly, before meeting Tim and meeting other people, getting more involved with the VIXA, and realizing, okay, this is something that I should check out and maybe prioritize. And being able to get to know people online was a huge driver for me actually showing up in person. And just like organizations have been doing things online, they've been finding they have new audiences because of this online exposure or digital exposure, or whatever you want to call it. So I think that there's an opportunity to actually bring more people if we don't just say, let's get everybody back in person. Everybody doesn't have to be in person. And there are a lot of people who can help grow the industry without showing up in person. So to me, it's a chance to really be expansive and to think differently about how people are engaged and letting them decide how they want to be engaged. If they want to come in person, great. If they want to do things that are just online or they can only do things online, give them that, because maybe 5 years from now, they'll show up in person. So I think there's a unique opportunity to not look back, to not try to be normal again, but to be now and to really seize. The thing that I was impressed by at ISE was the focus on digital art and the elevation of projection as an art form. And that to me is a tremendous opportunity for us as an industry, because it touches all sorts of people that may not have any idea what we do. And they have no idea about the plumbing behind a big presentation like what was done on the Block of Discord in Barcelona.
What to that point though, Brent, is one of the things that ISE and Mike Blackman and his team, Mike Blackman's the show director, the gentleman that runs ISE, what they've done on purpose, very purposefully over the last few years, even in Amsterdam before they left, was to show the city what this show is about, right? They had projection mapping on the water in Amsterdam 3 years ago or 2 years ago. This year, they had a building that Gaudi designed. They had Rafiq did a projection mapping on it, and then he sold it as an NFT for $1.5 million later that week. So, it's really interesting to see kind of how that team has been able to kind of wrap the city around what this show is about and kind of get their buy-in. I think is really, really fascinating.
I think that's important, but I think Brent, I'm glad you mentioned it as well. But I think the hybrid aspect, at least that's how we see it here at Epiphan, because it's something that we picked up on very quickly the first few days of the pandemic, was as everyone tried to pivot and do things in a hybrid way. That's been extremely successful for us in our corner of the world of business, and that hasn't really slowed down. And I think it won't. I think that box is open, that Pandora's box is open now. And I think exactly your point, Brent. It means that we don't have to restrict people who might, for whatever reason, be able to travel to the show but want to participate. There's a whole new avenue, there's a whole new path and a whole new group of people we can welcome in and share our expertise or share our products or whatever it might be. So for us, that's extremely exciting. And so that's why, yeah, and I'm also glad they're kind of counting the numbers properly. Even though at the first glance it may seem depressing, it actually turns out to be extremely positive. Yeah,
absolutely. And I think that's going to be the norm going forward is we heard quality over quantity last year at InfoComm. And to give folks kind of a benchmarker here, InfoComm in 21 was about 7,500 people. Qualified attendees, again, that was the number. Certainly, those of us who have gone to various trade shows, including NAB that both Epiphan and PTZ Optics was at, that felt, I believe they had a number around 55,000. Don't believe that they said qualified or not. So I think that we're slowly getting there, and we're going to getting back to, as Brent said, our new version of normal, not back to the old one. So next story here comes to us from AV Network and SCN. At InfoComm 2020, the AIMS Alliance is hosting its first ever interoperability demo. If you're not familiar with what AIMS is, AIMS and IPMX is a new, relatively new AV over IP solution. It is open standard, and it's going to have groups like Cisco. It's going to have Arista. It's going to have Mackinac. It's going to have Matrox. I believe they said about 10 or 20 various manufacturers are going to have interoperability. Easy for me to say at InfoComm. Matt, we'll start with you on this. PTZ Optics has a lot when it comes to video over the network. You guys use NDI quite extensively. When you look at the AIMS Alliance and what they're doing, where does it sit in terms of the AV over IP competing standards?
For me at the moment, I'm more curious in watching it for a little bit longer. I'm very excited about everything I read and have been reading about it. I think that the ideas presented are really exciting to allow this level of interoperability. However, I've heard the story a number of times before living in, the pro AV industry. So I usually, like a lot of things, I don't install firmware when it first comes out. I like to wait, a little bit. Same thing going on at the moment. I'm very intrigued. I'm excited. I love IP video in general. I think, leveraging networks is something that AV should have been doing for about 15 years at least at this point. So it's just beautiful to see this finally coming about. It's just, I'm eager to see actually if we achieve this interoperability, because a lot of the times you get people saying, yeah, I've implemented it, but you didn't have this unique feature set. So I went and customized it for myself, and the whole, chain starts to break down. So I'd just like to see a little buy-in with some big enough players saying, nope, we're leaning into this standard.
Oh, they got Cisco, for crying out loud, Matt. I mean, how much bigger do you want?
Well, Cisco changes its mind quite often, too.
I was going to say, I think that reinforces Matt's point.
I'm with Matt on this. I mean, I think, I spent 10 years in software, so I think open standard is the future for just about any kind of platform where you need interoperability.
Yeah.
So I'd be happy to see it take off. It's all about adoption. Mm-hmm. And, it's all about adoption. If there's widespread adoption, then, it's sort of like we all decided that smartphones were a good idea. And so we're all using them. If we had decided they weren't, we wouldn't be. You know, if people said, you know, I really like my BlackBerry, I want to stay here, then, you know, Apple wouldn't have become what it's become, and we wouldn't have, you know, folks with smartphones in their pockets. So adoption is everything. But I'm all for open standards in every way. I think it helps industries grow, and it helps bring new players to the table. It puts pressure on established players, which is good for my clients. So.
And I was going to ask Bren, because you said there, if we need that we need interoperability, do we need it? But I think you just answered it there, because it does put pressure on those established players, because you've got the young startups coming up behind them and saying, hey, here's something that might be newer, faster, better, stronger.
Yeah, I saw a tangent but related. I saw a one of the annual meetings for Berkshire Hathaway, Warren Buffett's company. And he showed a list of the top 10 companies in the world. And then he showed that list from like 15 years prior, and they were completely different companies. And, you know, you never know what the thing is that's going to be that turns markets upside down. But we should celebrate that, because it's exciting and it's good.
One of the things I tell my kids from time to time is, you know, somebody will eventually overtake Facebook, right? It will happen.
Oh, yeah. Facebook is dead right now. Let's face it; it's already dead. I mean, it's been dead for a long time, really.
It has, but they still keep making money, and they still have users, right? So
it's a zombie. Yeah. MySpace is still making money too.
All right, George, you'll finish up on this. What is interoperability and open standards mean to you guys?
Well, it's critical, I think, as everyone's already said. Interop and being open, I think, is pretty critical. You know, for me, reading it on paper, it sounds interesting. I think a lot like Matt, it sounds great, but, you know, for us, you know, it's difficult. We have to choose. We can't always do everything, right? As a manufacturer who makes encoders for live streaming and various other functions, right? We can't just include everything. That would be impossible. We have to choose. And, you know, one of the things we've seen, I'm looking at this and going, okay, so what is this adding above and beyond what we can do over standards that already exist, right? Like, we've seen huge ramp up of adoption in the past 3 years on things like SRT. So what does this do that SRT doesn't? And on paper, it looks like it might have some things, but are there people who are actually going to adopt it and utilize that or not? I don't know. Some of the big trends we saw the past couple trade shows, and I'm sure Infocom is going to be exactly the same way, is all about the cloud. Can people integrate this into the cloud in a big way? And is it going to be usable? And again, the buy-in. Again, speaking as a manufacturer, we held off joining the SRT Alliance for quite some time to watch it until it was clear that the momentum was so heavy that it was undeniable. And now that alliance is massive. So if they're trying to build an alliance, that's great. But at some point, you know, for it to really snowball, they have to reach a certain level. And I don't see that it's quite there yet. So yeah, like Matt, it's kind of a wait and see. It's great on paper, but there's so many of these standards now. And, you know, whether you're making cameras or whether you're making encoders, you gotta pick. You can't do it all.
So I have a question about that. And this is a personal issue, right, with the industry at large, and I'll let you know, anybody here chime in. Is it a standard if it's directly tied to a manufacturer, tied to a chip maker? Because the thing about AIMS and the thing about AVB, Avenue Alliance, whichever version, I don't care, and I'll write something at some point bitching about them. They are literally open standard, right? It's IEEE. These are folks that don't really have a financial foot in this, as opposed to Dante, right? Dante is a private company, well, publicly traded company, but it's a manufacturer of chipsets, right? And I can pick on various other ones. Is it really a standard if it's not, I guess, altruistic? I guess is where I'm getting all kind of doughy-eyed here.
Neutral. If it's not neutral.
Yeah.
I think, I think you're actually bang on there, Tim. And again, I think that's why I've got to harp on the SRT example a little bit more, but, you know, created by a company, but completely open sourced, right?
Yeah.
And so anybody who wants to implement it can go ahead and implement it. There's no licensing, there's nothing like that. But having a large, powerful company, and in that case, it's High Vision, saying this is the standard we want to promote, and we're starting at our level of the market, which is at the top of it, and seeing if it filters down, adds a lot of weight. But it also, the alliance was a big part of it. Like, let's get other people to buy in. Now, again, if they're trying to build a similar type of alliance, then that's great. And that might be what's required to make it a standard. But you're right. I think there's a big difference between an open standard and a closed standard, and we need to be specific. And if it's tied to hardware, to me, that's not an open standard at all.
I was going to say it's also the concept that, a solution could be based on a standard, and the adoption of that solution will determine whether or not it becomes a widely accepted standard.
Right.
Yeah. All right. Last story actually comes to us from our website. I got a chance to interview Justin Chong from Jupiter Networks. I've known Jupiter way back when they were tied to InFocus. They've done processing for video, good Lord, for 20 or 30 years now. That's where I was introduced to them. However, this was interesting to me, and it kind of took me by surprise. They started creating and manufacturing displays. And they had one, and Brent, I'm going to start with you on this. They were tying it in conjunction with Teams and Microsoft. It was a 21:9 aspect ratio display. Now, I don't want to get into the weeds on this, but understand the vast majority of you are either watching this or your TVs are on 16:9, right? That's 1920 by 1080. That's HD. I'm not going to get into 4K and the fake and UHD, but the 16:9 is your aspect. It's 16 wide and it's 9 high, right? 21:9 is slightly different than that. That's when you go to the cinema, and that is typically a cinematic display. It is different, and it's slight, but it's different. Bren, is this are we going this direction, or are we going this direction when it comes to certain software? Because what they were showing was Teams and Microsoft is saying 21:9 is where we want you to display Teams because of the canvas, right? Because you've got more room, you've got this, that, and the other, and you can put chat here, and you can see more of the people, and if you're showing, if you're sharing something on computer, but you can still see the people and their reaction. Or is this just kind of our latest version of 3D?
Oh, I don't know if it's the latest version of 3D. I don't think it even goes that far. It's a third order on 4.3, right? So, and I seem to recall that there was 21.9 like 15 years ago, and this is just, going back to the future or something. It's Microsoft. It's going to get adopted where people have Teams adopted, which is a lot of places. Is it going to drive industry level? I can't say. Microsoft often does things that they make particular choices for, and you don't necessarily see them end up being everywhere.
All right, George.
I'll just leave it sort of there.
George, I was having this conversation with another industry friend this week, and they made the comment. They said, "Yeah, and Microsoft also made the Zune." So,
and even though the Zune was actually a better device than the iPod, it really was. It was, but again, Microsoft was marketing it, so people didn't know. If you held one side by side and you didn't see the logo on them, you would have picked the Zune every time. But anyway,
especially on audio quality, just for the record.
I think my version of that Tim, is that I always pull out the company that made Windows Millennium, right? Because I remember that, and that was a disaster. So it's but at the same time, looking at this as a user and someone who converted to using ultra wide displays a couple of years ago, I looked at this Pana 34 that Jupiter has, and my instant reaction was, I want that. I want it. I don't care what it costs. I want it. I love the stand. I love the camera. I like literally everything they've put into that particular model. I want that on my desk tomorrow. I won't get it, but it doesn't change the fact that I want it. And so it's actually...
I can have Paige, our head of sales, connect you with Justin if you'd like.
But it's... but funny anecdote, last fall when we were starting to pivot people more back into the office, we needed to re-equip things because we wanted people to be hybrid. So we wanted everything they took home from the office to stay in their home office and re-equip the office with stuff. And I put it out to my team our customer success team and I said, hey guys, here's the list of stuff that we're authorized to take. Who wants multi 16:9 displays? Who wants ultra wides? Let me know. And it was about 50-50. But I would say that the people who didn't take ultra wides, as soon as they saw the ultra wides, regretted their decision, but it was too late. And for me, it's about productivity. I love it. I absolutely love that format for productivity. I absolutely see where Microsoft is coming from in terms of using it within Teams. It makes a lot of sense with everything else they've done. The other day I was in a Teams meeting and someone turned on together mode and someone else, this is stupid. What is this silly gimmick? And I said, there's studies showing that that's more engaging than the gallery. Mm-hmm. That's what this is all about. So for me, it makes perfect sense. Reading through the specs, like I say, I love it and I want it. And I get where Microsoft's coming from on this for sure.
All right. Matt, we'll have the last word on this. Does this make sense?
I think it does. I would resonate with a lot of what I'm hearing here, but the thing that I saw immediately, and maybe a little bit less so with the smaller versions, the 105, 85, I see this a little bit more. I think it's an excellent way for them to start introducing all these concepts around calm technology that companies like Google and Microsoft they keep talking about. We don't really see any action, but the concept that things live in your peripheral vision and can notify you about what's actually going on without interrupting your call or you being in the middle of a speech starts to become very easy when you have a display that's 21:9. You truly can have things in that peripheral vision that act as beautiful notifications.
All right. Well, that'll be a good place to stop. Thank you all so much. Bren Walker from Kierkegaard, thank you, ma'am. How do people connect with you?
They can reach me on email, bren@kierkegaard.com, LinkedIn, Brenda J. Walker, and occasionally Twitter, Bren Walker AV.
Especially on Sunday mornings during AVNation.
On Sunday mornings. Sunday mornings dragged me back onto Twitter after ditching it for 7 years or something.
And I am going to get
I was well ahead of that fake account thing. I could have told Elon about that.
I am going to get you connected with the illustrious Mr. Neto and let you beat him up for getting you back on Twitter. So,
yeah.
George, thank you so much, sir. How do people connect with you or Epiphan?
Well, you can always find all things Epiphan at epiphan.com, and you can find us on all those social places. We put out a lot of content on YouTube, weekly webinars and things like that. So check it out if you're interested in all the fun things that we do. And you can always send us emails, info@epiphan.com, and things will reach me. Follow along and see the future.
All right. And Mr. Davis, thank you, sir. How do people connect with you or PTZ Optics?
Yeah, so again, just like George, ptzoptics.com is a great way to find all the sorts of information about our products. We have countless videos on YouTube, which you may or may not be aware of at this point. And if you actually are trying to get a hold of me, reach out via any of the email addresses you find and just say you're looking for me.
Okay. And you'll see both Epiphan and PTZ Optics at Infocom. You'll actually see Bren as well. You'll see me. But for me, don't follow me on the Twitters. But go by the website if you would, avnation.tv. That's avnation.tv. You will find this program and a host of others. I mentioned the fact that Brian and I were at ISE last week. You will find all of our videos there at avnation.tv. And then you'll find us previewing already because by the time this posts 2 weeks from now, I'll be in Vegas for Infocom. If you are an end user for AV gear, if you're a tech manager, IT manager, in-house integrator, anything of the sorts, we've got all sorts of parties for you. We also have parties for you if you are a manufacturer. But the first couple, AVNation Fuse, which is our end user portal, that is having a get together at the Ice Bar in Las Vegas from 5 to 9 on Tuesday, the 7th of June. You can sign up for that at avnation.tv. And then Wednesday is a free-for-all. Everybody in the industry is invited 4 to 6 on the show, well, just off the show floor in the West Hall. It is our annual AVNation tweet up from 4 to 6. So you can sign all up for all of those at avnation.tv and find all of our Infocom coverage and ISC coverage as well. So all that and more at avnation.tv. It's avnation.tv. Thanks so much for listening. Thank you so much for watching. That is all the time we have for AV Week.